lucky.
Hello and welcome to Galactic Goddess Podcast. I'm your host, Radha Nelia, and today we have a very special guest, Bonnie Melita. We are going to be discussing moving through the veil, birthing out of this world, finding strength to support loved ones, and embarking on the next big adventure. Welcome, Bonnie.
Hi, Radha. Thank you so much for having me here.
It's just a pleasure to be with you. We are going to be honoring your mother today.
Thank you.
Yes, and talking about a process that you've been recently going through and that perhaps many others can relate to. So would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So today is actually 3 weeks ago that my mom flew away with the angels. And my mom and I have been extremely close my entire life. And she lived with me probably for the last 9 or so years. And the last 4 of those years, were just probably the closest we've ever been, if we could get any closer than we already were. And I, was with her really 24/7 almost. A few breaks here and there, but mostly with her all the time. So obviously having her leave the physicality has been a challenge, to say the least. Yeah. So excuse me, I may tear up a time or two.
Absolutely understandable. Thank you for even coming on and sharing, because it's been coming as a download a lot that there are going to be waves of our beloveds. Not everyone, but there will be this wave. It's a collective wave of people leaving the earth, and we as a society, especially as Americans, are not comfortable talking about death or the process or what happens before, during, and after. And that's why this is such a important conversation that we're having, although very tender, because this is so recent for you.
Mm-hmm.
But I've really just been in admiration of how you have been in a deep commitment to be of service to your mother, while she was alive and going through her process, and also after, like you did something really special with her. Do you mind to speak on that?
No, of course. First, I'd like to just jump back to the word death. I don't really prefer that word, and I still use it myself sometimes because it is the common vernacular, but especially as I have journeyed with her through that transition, I feel like the word death is such a misnomer. Like it's just not the right word.
Mm-hmm.
Because it does sort of, it has this sort of finality to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then that would suggest that we really do live in a world of duality, and I really don't think we do live in a world of duality. We have these ideas of duality because that's sort of how we can wrap our brain around things, but I think more and more we're going to need to stop looking at things in this sort of dual way. And life and death, to me, that is obviously, that's a dual concept. And I really don't believe that anything that ever was alive can not be alive. So yes, we have this physical body that is animated by something, but the life is not so much the physical body as it is the spirit, the soul, whatever you want to call it. And the body, I think when we, this is something that my mom raised me with. She always said that when she died, when she passed, when she left this world, she wanted to be just thrown on top of the compost pile. My mom was, she was an organic farmer. She raised me on an organic farm. She tried to grow as much of our food as she possibly could. She did a pretty good job of it, by the way. And so she very much saw and understood the cycle of things, and how, as she created a compost pile, for example, that these plants or weeds or pieces of produce that she put onto this compost pile were not dead. They were morphing into another form of life. And so I think that was really why she wanted to be thrown on the compost pile. I think that's where that came from. She knew that we couldn't legally do that, but that was what, for her, would be the most logical and beautiful way for her physicality to be able to transition, that it would just continue to process and morph and change itself into something else. And so when she passed, I knew she did not want to be cremated. She did not want to be embalmed. Cremation, she said, that just takes way too much fuel. Just remember one day she was like, because she had thought, okay, I guess cremation, because I don't want to be embalmed. Embalming is just so many chemicals, and putting all that into the earth can't be good. So I guess I'll be cremated. And then suddenly one day she came to me, she goes, I don't want to be cremated. I said, why not? She goes, because it takes too much fuel. And I said, how? Really? How do you know? And she said, well, think about it. When you make a fire, if you put dry wood on, it burns very easily. If you put a piece of wet wood on, it requires a lot more dry wood to get that wet wood to dry out enough to burn. So inevitably, I'm not going to be dry. It's going to take too much fuel. I don't want to be cremated. It's going to just take way too much fuel. That's going to be a waste. So she didn't quite know, exactly, neither of us did exactly how to deal with that. But in her, in her final days and whatever, we were able to have many conversations and about various things. It just really, not that we exactly talked about that, but just we talked about things that gave me the guidance, and she would say things that gave me the guidance to know when the time started approaching what, that I knew that I needed to take her to her farm and plant her in the ground. And so I was very fortunate because we're very good friends with the medical examiner here and his wife. They're two of our dearest friends. And she always said to me, for many years, she had been saying, if something happens to me, or when something happens to me, he's the first person you call. I want him to be the one to come first, and I want him to take care of me. Okay, fine. So we were able to do that, fortunately. Oh no, that's not a luxury everybody has. But he was also able to help me find the steps to do what I knew she wanted done, which is take her and put her in the earth. And so we did. We were able to take her there, transport her there, and Mom and I studied something called biogeometry. About 10 years ago, we started studying that, and that's a whole other topic. I highly suggest you go look it up if you don't know anything about it. But one of the many things about biogeometry is you learn how to find the ley lines in the earth and all the different energy lines, grid lines of the earth. Some of them have a positive energy they emit. Some of them have a not so positive, very detrimental energy that they emit. And when I say detrimental, I mean to our bodies, to human beings. And so historically, the ancients would build their temples and things on top of where two of these positive energy lines would cross, would create a power spot, which was just really strong emission of good, healing, uplifting, divine energy. And so one of our dear friends who is very involved with biogeometry and is very adept at this system was able to come, and she checked and found. I knew, there was an area of the farm where there's a big field. My mom grew organic garlic and blueberries. That was kind of her. Those were kind of her thing. And so our friend found a place in the field near the garlic where there were two positive lines that crossed. There were two areas. One was actually in the garlic field, one was beside it. So I was like, well, let's try the one beside it because in it's going to be a problem. And it just felt right anyway. So I literally laid down on the earth once we found where the crossing was, because I wanted to know what it felt like there. And I didn't know why I wanted to know what it felt like. I just wanted to know what it felt like there because I knew that's where her body was going to be. The body that brought me into this world now going to be planted there. So I wanted to know what that spot felt like. So I laid down on top of this crossing to feel what it felt like. And I was so aware that we needed to place her so that her heart would be on the power spot.
Wow.
So we put her body running the length of one of the lines and her heart right at the crossing so that that positive energy would be emanating through her physicality. And I think whatever energy and essence of her being that may, still have been lingering around the body would certainly be emitted out. That's why they put churches in towns in the center, and everything went, was out from the church. That was the central place because it was on the power spot, and it would send, all that good energy would be sent out through the town. Yeah. And so it just seemed right to put her heart there. She was so full of love. She was just such a loving person, gave so much love, so much. She just gave to everyone. And so I thought, what a beautiful thing for her heart to be on that power spot. So when they came to prepare the space, I was very honored to notice that the man who was doing it just was doing it with this sort of reverence. And so, I wanted to stay there for that process and watch it happen, because I felt very, very strongly that I had been with her so long, and every step of her journey thus far I had been right by her side. I didn't want to not know everything I could know about what was happening. So I was watching and just appreciating this man's reverence for what he was doing. He wasn't just digging in the dirt. He was just with reverence and respect on his face. And when he finished, he asked us, he said, I'm a little deeper than I legally have to be. Is this okay? Or do you want it deeper? What do you want? So we were able to measure and check that he was a little deeper than the line ran in the earth. So he brought it up to the bottom of where the line was, so that she would be fully in that space, which was, I just was so honored that he thought to ask that. And I feel like all of this was being guided by some other energy. I don't know if it was my mom or the divine or a combination thereof. I don't know, but I felt like nothing was by chance. So once he was done, he was down in the hole with a shovel doing whatever, leveling. I didn't know what he was doing, but I said, I really feel like I need to be in there. Like, I just feel like I need to go down in there. So my friend was like, go, do it. So I asked him, is that okay? Can I do that? I don't know legally if I could, if it was a liability or what. He said, oh, you want to come down in here? Come on. He reaches his hands up and helps me down in. So I just jumped down in there, and he left and just left me there, which I thought was really beautiful. He just left me there to be with that space. And I was barefoot, and I can still feel the soil on my feet. I just stepped on every spot of the bottom of that space and just put my footprints everywhere. And then I asked the people who were there, can you go get goldenrod? Can you go get dog fennel? Her blueberries are over there. They're turning the beautiful shade of red that she loves so much. Go get me some blueberry branches. So they brought these things. They brought some of her garlic they found, and peppermint that she grew, and we just put all of that. I was like, I'm just gonna make her a compost pile. That's what she wanted. I can't just throw her on top of a compost pile that's existing on top of the earth, but I can make one in here. So we did, just made her a little compost pile. She has a fig tree nearby that she had named Happy, and she was always talking to her fig tree. And while she was with me and away from it, she always worried about Happy. And whenever anybody was going down to check on the farm, she'd say, tell them to talk to Happy. Happy needs to be spoken to. She likes conversation. Tell them to talk to Happy. And she just was concerned about Happy all the time. So we had a fig leaf, from Happy, who we found out is the matrix holder tree. Every property has a tree that is a matrix holder of that property. Turns out Happy is the matrix holder for the property.
Wow, that's just incredible.
I know, right?
Incredible. I mean, this conversation and what we're just speaking of may be like, whoa, to many people, because I don't think people are aware that it's even possible and legal to do this. How, for those who are interested in creating something like this, what are the processes of which?
Well, it very much depends on not only what state you're in, but at least in the state where her farm is, it also matters by county. Every county has its own ordinances, so you have to check with wherever you are and see what the ordinances are. I was fortunate that there was no ordinance against that, so I was able to plant her there and stay just as she was, just wrapped up in 100% silk cloth, silk blanket.
Wow.
Just pure as she wanted to be. And that was, so she got her compost pile, and she gets to go back to the earth as quickly as possible. We also, I've never liked caskets. I just really, really don't like them. The look of them just has always bothered me.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know there was another option. But fortunately, the woman who was helping me with all of the arrangements did know there was another option. And I had said the words green burial to her in the very beginning. So I did not know that if you say the words green burial, apparently that comes with a basket instead of a casket. And so she said, when we were talking about price and all of that, she was like, well, I have to check the price of the basket because I've never used that. So I don't know what that is. And I'm like, basket? What basket? And she said, well, you said you wanted a green burial, so that's what they usually use. I was like, really? I wasn't so sure about that at first because the picture I conjured up in my head did not seem very good.
Mm-hmm.
But so I said, well, I think I'd rather something wooden. And then she sent me all these pictures, and they were just this casket. And I was like, no, that's just not, I knew it wasn't right for my mom. It just was not right. So I messaged her back and said, okay, what does a basket look like? And she sent me a picture, and I was like, oh, wow, that is exactly my mom. And it was perfect because my mom was an artist, and for many years she made baskets. She was a basket weaver, and in one room of her house, the ceiling is full of baskets that she wove. So I thought how appropriate that she's in a basket. And I thought that's going to allow her to go back to the earth so much more quickly, so much more naturally. And that's exactly what she wanted. So now this physical body, gets to just continue life in the process that she felt she was meant to. And I think maybe we're all really meant to. I don't know the practicality of that with so many people on the planet. I don't know, but I am so grateful that I was able to do that for her and with her. And I have to say too that, I thought I was doing it for her, but what I learned in the process is that the way I did it ended up being for me as well, and for also the other people who are her closest, people surrounding her. It really helped through the process because I've always had a problem watching them lower someone down into the ground. That part just always gets me. And I thought, how am I going to stand it when it's my mom? But I was absolutely fine with it because I had been in there, because I had prepared the space, because I knew the energy of the space was beautiful and waiting to receive her with so much love and so much divine energy. And I was totally fine. I couldn't believe it's the first time in my entire life I've watched them lower someone down and I haven't just cried my eyes out.
Wow.
But it came from me being allowed to do what I did, and from me listening to my instincts and doing what she wanted, being committed to doing what she wanted. Because there's so many, I noticed, I mean, there were so many steps along the way. As the woman who was helping me with the arrangements, I mean, she was a gem, because everything I was saying was like something new for her. And there were a few places where she would say, no, Bonnie, no, you need to do this. And I would say, no. My mom would not, like, she wanted a tent, for example. We need to bring the chairs and the tents. And I said, no. I said, Bonnie, no, we need a tent out there. It's going to be outside. We need a tent. I said, no. My mom would want the open sky. And that is true. I knew she loved that openness. She loved to look at the sky, feel the sun, all of that. I was like, no, my mom would not want it. So she said, well, okay then. If your mom would not want it, we will not have a tent. So we didn't have tents. And so many things like that. She was so wonderfully willing to hear me and hear what was important to me and to my mom and to those of us, connected with this process. She was just so willing. And that, that is a gift to have been able to find that. And it wasn't the first place I called either. I mean, I didn't get that sort of response from everyone. So, but from her I did. So I was committed to finding that. I didn't know what it was I was looking for. I just knew I wasn't looking for what I was getting. So I went and looked for something else. And when I found the right thing, I knew it, and I went with it. So yeah. And even my husband, my ex-husband, he terrified of death, terrified. And after I went down into the hole, he was like, I kind of want to go in there. And I said, go. So he did. And do you know, since then, his fear of that process has completely dissipated.
Wow.
He is so relaxed about it now. And I mean, he was terrified, like really, really, like run away terrified. So he gets to now think about what he wants for himself in that process in the future, because he now has healed that part of himself. And I'm so grateful to my mom for wanting what she wanted in her leaving this planet to go for her next big adventure, because she gifted us the opportunity to heal ourselves as we went through this process. And there were tons of opportunities where I could have said, okay, that's how I do it. Okay, I'll do it. Because the woman who was helping me arrange it, she didn't know these things. And so she was guiding me the way she knew. But I was willing to say, no, that doesn't work. And she was willing to say, okay, what works for you? And I would say, and she would, we're able to collaborate and work together. And that was the most healing thing, Radha. I mean, and at the end, of her ceremony, of her celebration, there's a Native American tradition apparently where they call it the last handshake, where everyone who wants to is able to take a handful of dirt and put it in. And I know the Jewish faith, they also put the dirt in. And I had read years ago that the more involved you can be in in this process with your loved one who is gone, the more involved you can be, the easier it will be for you.
Yes,
And I
yes.
kind of thought that was nutty at the time, because I just, the thought of doing what I ended up doing at that time to me was like, no way, no way. But when I was in the moment, I was so glad that I had that information rolling around somewhere in the archives of my brain, because I realized, and we had some communication with a rabbi just before she left as well. And he, when she passed, I let him know, and he said, well, I don't know what you want to do. I don't know what your plans are, but I just want to let you know one of the things we feel is very important is to put the dirt in.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, I understand that, but I still wasn't like ready to conceptualize that. But in the moment, in the day, as I was planning with my friend, who was guiding this celebration, and another very dear friend of ours had driven a long ways to get there, and he offered this information that the Native Americans would traditionally call it the last handshake, and everybody who wanted could throw the dirt in. And my friend said, I like that. Do you like that? And I said, yeah. She goes, except because it's your mom, we need to call it the last hug, because she was like the best hugger. And I was like, yeah, we do. And so when she told everyone, that we were going to do that, and they had that option, and she said, we want to call it the last hug because Faye was such a good hugger. And you could see all these heads nodding yes, and everybody just kind of smiling and chuckling to themselves. And you could see them remembering and feeling her hugging them. So it was just beautiful, the whole process. And another thing that I did, because I knew she loved flowers, and she loved to be, she loved to enjoy flowers and be given flowers, but she was not real big on florist flowers. And I knew she wouldn't want a bunch of florist arrangements. And I know I wouldn't want them either, and if you think about the florist arrangements, okay, they're beautiful and that's wonderful, but there's a lot of carbon footprint that comes from those. If nothing else, just getting the flowers from Colombia or wherever they come from, there's a huge carbon footprint. So I had let everyone know, please don't bring flowers from the florist. If you want different flowers, bring flowers from your yard. Stop on the roadside on the way there and pick flowers from the ditch or whatever. That's fine. But, please don't bring any florist arrangements. And at the time, it was like 3 p.m. The sun was bright. We're in this freshly mowed field. And I'm watching people walk across the field in the sunshine carrying these bouquets of just stunning wildflowers that they had found on the way there. And it just filled my heart. And I know that it meant something to them, because every single one of them would walk up to me with their flowers and say, oh, look, I got her these because I saw these and I thought she would like them. Or, oh, I had been waiting and waiting for these to bloom in my yard, and they hadn't bloomed, and they bloomed yesterday, and I knew that they were for her. Or like my cousin comes walking up with this grapevine wreath that she had stuck wildflowers in, and she looks at me and she goes, I made this for Aunt Faye. And know how many grapevine baskets she made. And she was always winding up grapevine. So I went and got this for her this morning. And it was just so lovely, that they had just taken the time to go pick flowers for her. And I could feel her joy with that. It's just, every piece of it was so perfect and so wonderful. But it was because she always taught me not to be afraid to do the different thing. She always taught me not to be afraid to question the status quo, to do something different. And even in her leaving, she created a wave of difference and set a trend. And now everybody who was at her ceremony practically wants to have a basket when they go.
Wow.
Everybody's touched and says, oh, what a beautiful experience. I'm changed. I'm different.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. I think that Yeah, just sharing this whole experience can be very healing for listeners, and when they think about where they're going to go next with their loved ones and even for themselves. Um, I know that it's a process where you do not use chemicals, because you don't want to use chemicals in this process because the whole point is it's organic. We
Hmm.
came to this world organic and we should leave the same.
Yeah.
And because otherwise, if you do that process and without the coffin, like it's going into the ground, all those chemicals. So it's actually a very toxic industry.
Yeah.
That everything we do in this earth seems to be very, very, very toxic and actually against the laws of nature.
Hmm.
It's disrespectful. It's dishonorable in many ways, the way that we treat the beautiful bodies of people after passing. And as you said earlier with the word death, like I agree with you.
Hmm.
There are I don't believe in the finality of it, because in the work that I do, I've communicated with many loved ones on the other side for myself and for others. And with my dogs passing, I see them in the sky as dragons. And so there's a connection that keeps flowing. Even last night when I was looking at the fireplace, I know this sounds really strange or funny, but I saw my dog in the fire and a piece of wood. And it's not because that piece of wood was her, but I saw her essence spark through and
Hmm.
just say, hey, I love you.
Hmm.
And so those are the things that we can look out for. Those are the things that we can be conscious of, that there is this continuation and there is that communication. It is possible, and it's not only possible, it's there. It's the question is, do we have the ears? Do we have the heart? Do we have the intuition to feel, see, and connect, and so it's not that it's not there, it's there, like the warmth of your mother, it's here.
Hmm. It is. And she visits me constantly. She tells me things all the time. And does it mean that I don't miss her? Does it mean that I don't cry my eyes out? No.
Ah,
But because I was able to walk through the process so hands-on, it has helped immeasurably. And for that, I am so grateful. And I just encourage everyone to just face it as much as you can instead of just handing everything over to someone to just do everything, because you'll be so enriched and so much more connected to your loved one, and so much more connected to your own self and your own mortality and acceptance of that. It's
yeah.
incredible.
It's so beautiful. What you've brought forward today was so precious, full of
Mhm.
gems, full of love, and full of inspiration, because these conversations are very important, and I just appreciate you for your openness and your authenticity, your love and your commitment, that you made to your mom, and you followed through every step of the way. And I can so understand how being part of the process every step of the way it's actually your mourning and you're doing and you're being there for them, so you don't feel this kind of disassociation from it. You're right there
Mhm.
processing it in real time, and I think that is very invaluable. So I really thank you for sharing that and inviting people to be more hands-on and to look into green burials, because I think it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So beautiful. So it takes so much courage too, because as you said, it is hands-on. We have to,
Mhm.
uh, be part of the process rather than be disassociated from it,
Mhm.
and choosing every aspect and being part of the earth, part of the ground. We are part of Mother Gaia, and
Yeah.
this is the deepest healing that we can do. And it's gonna break your heart open, and it's going to bring also a lot of healing as this
You know
process.
what? It does break your heart open, but just as a farmer breaks the earth open in order for the ground to be ready to receive the seed to grow new
Mhm.
life, the same thing I think is happening. That's the process I feel happening. It's broken my heart open, but I know seeds are being planted, and I don't know yet which seeds they are. I'm not sure yet what's going to grow out of them, but I know it is going to be beautiful, and I know it's going to be so inspired by my mom and everything she stood for.
Mm, so beautiful. Thank you.
And don't be afraid to change the words. Don't be afraid to change the languaging around these things to fit the way you feel. Like I feel that I planted my mom.
Mm.
That just feels so much better to me than saying bury. Bury just
Yes, yes. And so
planted her. I planted her in the field, you know?
it's so beautiful. I can totally see that. I can see the blooming, the flowers. And I do think it is important. I think that shifting conversation, but we do need to be re-educated around this because we haven't been taught anything else, you know. So therefore, there has to be another conversation about rewording these experiences so that they're not so morbid. We
Yeah.
can find this light and the beauty and the grace and the blooming in all of this. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it is an adventure, and she's on her adventure on the other side. So it's
Yes.
continuous. It's nonstop.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. And she is having a grand time of it.
I'm sure she appreciates you so immensely, and so we honor your mother, and I honor you for stepping into this commitment so courageously, so full of love, and may that serve as an inspiration to our listeners to know that it's not only possible, you know, but it's going to be so beautiful. It can be beautiful, and we can reframe these words and this experience to be empowering, even though tears come and grief and all of those emotions are going to come through. It's not bypassing. This is stepping into it courageously rather than stepping away and hiding. So thank you so much for coming on today, and I hope we can continue this conversation about rewording. Maybe we could do that.
Well, thank you, Retta, very much for having me, because every time I talk about or think about planting her, the celebration that we had to plant her, it makes me smile. And I think that's how it should be.
Yeah.
So thank you for opening up Pandora's box there.
And thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, much love and blessings to you all. Bye for now.